our monthly learning series, Lunch and Learn. We have some wonderful speakers with us here today. We have Roz Switzer, who is a co-leader of our Sonoran broadband. We have Chandra Legou, who is a co-leader of our Willamette Valley broadband. And we have Timothy Inglesby, who is the executive director of Fusey. And they are going to walk us through some of the really important issues that are taking place this week, last week, really hot stuff. So I will turn it over to Chandra.
Okay, and I'm going to put up a pretty picture for y'all. Okay. All right, let me just situate my notes. Okay. Everyone can see that? Give me a. All right, cool. Well, if you love public lands and you haven't literally been out there in them in a cave for the last year, you likely know about the roadless rule and the effort to repeal it by the current administration. And if you have been out in the woods for the last year, welcome back. I recommend you write a comment real quick on this and then you get back out there. You're going to be better off. So again, I'm Chandra. I am the co-leader of the Willamette Valley Broadband in Oregon, and I also work for Oregon Wild, which is a statewide advocacy organization. So that's why I'm kind of enmeshed in all of this, and why a lot of the pictures you'll see are from Oregon's roadless areas. But first, I'm going to start with a quick reminder about what the roadless rule is. So this is a rule, a policy that protected 58 million acres of inventoried roadless areas across the country back in 2001. These roadless areas are found in 38 states, and 9 million of those are in Alaska and the Tongass National Forest. So we're talking about national forests only, not BLM or any state lands that this applies to. And the rule prohibited all new road building and reconstruction, and prohibited commercial logging and extraction in these inventoried areas. And it's not as strict as the Wilderness Act, so you can still have motorized equipment, mountain bikes, OHVs, chainsaws, that sort of thing in roadless areas. I also want to call attention to the fact that this is a rule. It's a policy. It is not a law. Which means that it can be changed by an administration or agency and not, and Congress doesn't get a say in making this rule. So that will come into play later when we talk about what we can do about this. So the roadless rule was made under the Clinton administration and had extensive public engagement through hundreds of hearings and several comment periods before it was enacted. The resource extraction industries and friendly elected officials to them have never liked the roadless rule as a nationwide policy, and so they've worked to get rid of it in various ways over the past 25 years. For example, in Trump's first term, that administration attempted to exempt the Tongass National Forest in Alaska from the rule, but then the Biden administration reapplied it. There's been lots of this stuff that's gone on over the last 25 years. But last year, the Trump administration announced its intent to rescind the roadless rule entirely, and we had a 21-day comment period on that proposal a year ago. That period led to 600,000 public comments, with 99% opposing the scrapping of the roadless rule. When was the last time 99% of Americans agreed on anything, right? So the next phase of this process began last week with the release of the draft environmental impact statement and proposed rule with a 30-day comment period. So that's where we are right now. That comment period ends September 21st. And then a final decision could happen sometime next year, but that's likely not going to be the end of the story because there will be lots of people fighting, litigating, et cetera, to keep this rule in place. So also I want to remind us of how we got here. We have the roadless rule because it was predated by decades of rampant extraction and fragmentation through logging and road building primarily. The roadless rule helped pause that to maintain much of the wild habitat, clean water, and backcountry recreation and intact forests that we had left. So what came out last week is concerning. and we stand to lose a lot. So what was proposed in this next stage is the proposed rule would rescind the roadless rule entirely. So right now that's includes about 45 million acres of roadless areas. I know I said 58 earlier, and that's because Colorado and Idaho now have their own roadless rules for their states. So there's almost 45 million acres of roadless areas that would be opened up for road building, commercial logging, and other development under this proposed rule. There is a third alternative to this draft environmental impact statement, alternative 3, but it's also terrible. It's essentially doing the same thing. It rescinds the roadless rule across 31.7 million acres. They're getting rid of roadless areas that are within a half a mile of an existing road. And it rescinds the roadless rule for the Tongass National Forest. So all 9 million acres of that temperate rainforest would lose protections under the roadless rule. So, essentially it's giving the 1% what they want. The 99% of the public comments that supported protections for the roadless rule are not getting what they want out of this. So we're talking about the timber and mining industries, those who push for more motorized use on public lands. And unfortunately, what they're pushing for is not just the repeal of the roadless area protections. This move goes along with the many executive orders that are mandating extraction on public lands, legislative proposals that back those up, and administrative moves to weaken environmental laws and cut the public out of decision making. It's a lot of fun stuff. And while big industry and billionaires stand to win, everybody and everything else stands to lose. So much of what we value about public lands is made better by protecting roadless areas. And I know this is just going to be up here real quick, but the difference between roaded areas and roadless areas is vast as far as the ecosystems and human communities that these places support. So what are the impacts of the repeal on the things that we value, that we care about? Well, it's going to imperil wildlife. And I should say everything that I'm putting up in the next couple of slides is what's in the analysis the government put out. So they're admitting these negative impacts from repealing the roadless rule. So it would adversely affect over 300 threatened and endangered species and their critical habitat. It admits that water quality would be threatened through more roads and the sediment that gets dumped into waterways. It will inhibit native biodiversity through invasive plant spread. It undermines tribal rights and interests. Flat out admits that through the comment process and consultation, the majority of tribal sentiment is that they want to keep the roadless rule and that it benefits their interests. So this is flying directly in the face of what tribes want. The proposed repeal also states that the Forest Service could build new roads in about 45% of current roadless areas in the short term. And we don't need the problems that come with those roads. That's why the roadless rule was developed in the first place. So national forests already have 380,000 miles of roads, and there's a $7 billion maintenance backlog. Here's one that hits close to home for me because, and I think probably most broads, is that recreation will be harmed. The roadless rule protects thousands of miles of trails and other backcountry routes or rivers that we all love to experience and when we're out on public lands. So the repeal of the rule will impact many of our favorite places and lead to a huge economic loss. There's the analysis states that removing the roadless rule will result in a loss of $9 million in annual visitor spending. But if you look at the bigger picture of how much outdoor recreation contributes to local economies, I think it's probably much bigger than that. And finally, a lot of this is couched around the need to reduce wildfire risk reduction, or the need to reduce wildfire risk. And I'm going to turn it over to Tim Inglesby with Fusey to talk a little bit more about that. And Tim, if it's all right with you, I can just leave this slide up because it's got some good information.
All right, thank you, Chandra, and thank you for the Great Old Bras for Wilderness for hosting me. Um, I just want to talk briefly about strategy here. For the last year since this proposal came out, the apparent or alleged rationale is to reduce wildfire risks, aid wildfire prevention and suppression, make it safer and more efficient for wildland firefighters to go out there and aggressively attack wildfires. And that is what we've been preparing for, rallying firefighters to speak out against. And what we got with the draft EIS is, oh, no, no, this is really about local control, not about fire control. Well, that's what they say in the draft EIS. Meanwhile, most of the public messaging is still trying to stoke the public's fear of wildfires and, that this is about fires. So whether this whole scam is about local control, which I think they're trying to get past some right-wing red state judge who might kind of, align with those arguments, or is it about fire control and make it safer, more efficient for firefighters? The reality is it's all about corporate control and basically handing over public wildlands to resource extraction industry. So let's talk about fire risks because if that is the continuing messaging, and I actually encourage people to address those wildfire related issues, even if they kind of agree that they don't hold much water. There's two ways to define risk. One is probability of some bad event happening, and the other is what are the consequences of that event happening. So with fire risks, it hands down the science is clear. The vast majority of wildfires are started by human beings. And the vast majority of those human-caused wildfires ignite nearby roads. So punching in new roads into unroaded or roadless areas is going to increase the number of human-caused ignitions. So you can't claim that this is going to make it safer for firefighters when you're increasing their burdens. And each and every wildfire suppression incident puts crews at risk. They're just inherent hazards. So building new roads, I should say carving new roads into roadless areas. This is not about, firefighters racing to flames on paved roads with big engines to hook up into fire hydrants. These roads are hazardous in themselves. So the risk measured in probability is going to soar with the number of wildfires that will increase with new roads in roadless areas. And then what are the consequences of wildfires in roadless areas? Well, there again, the science is pretty clear that these roadless areas are the most resilient, naturally resilient to wildfires because they've had less roads, less logging, less resource extraction, and less aggressive fire suppression. So even though wildfires may be big in roadless areas because we can't drive to them, well, they actually are more resilient and not typically not as severe. And these are actually the areas where firefighters can manage them for more ecological benefits. Chandra's already talked about the road maintenance issue, 7, 8, $12 billion backlog. Again, these are not about paved roads. These are gravel roads carved into steep mountain slopes. And just the dust that kicks up makes them extremely hazardous. They're often bordered a cliff. Uh, they're rutted, washboard rutted. They're littered with rolling rocks and logs, lined with flammable fuels like invasive weeds, grasses, shrubs. I mean, and they're cut across the mid-slope of mountains. Really a very bad place for firefighters to stage and try to stop fires. You're facing hazards of stuff rolling down on top of you or racing up from below. They're just these roads were the roads that we have were made were built to haul lumber, excuse me, haul timber, not halt fires. Okay. And that's what they're really about. It's about resource extraction, not fire suppression. It's about getting the cut out, not putting the fire out. So this false promise, phony claim that we need to carve new roads into roadless areas to for the sake of wildland firefighter safety and efficiency is just bunk. And we just have a simple slogan, not in our name, you don't. So thank you so much for this invitation here to present. I'll be happy to answer questions when the Q&A starts.
Thank you so much, Tim. Love hearing your perspective. All right, so what are we going to do about all this? We're Great Old Broads is part of a huge nationwide coalition working to ensure the roadless rule stays in place. And over the past few months, since we thought this rule would be released in the spring, there have been a lot of events and education getting people ready to take action. So that's probably why most of you have heard about all this. So now it's go time, and it's time to get on the record and work to protect everything we treasure about these wild landscapes. So how do we do that? Well, we write comments. This is probably not an activity that is unfamiliar to folks on here. I know that it can feel a little hopeless to speak out to this administration. And in this case, the agency, the Forest Service, making this decision don't have to listen to what the majority wants. Clearly, 99% of us already said we didn't want this, and they're moving forward. But it is really important that we do get on the record here. The Roadless Coalition that we're working with is aiming for 1 million comments. And that's a strong number that we can demonstrate to legislators who are subject to majority vote, and that people support, this protection. And then we can also use, those strong numbers in the media, et cetera. And it's important to have strong substantive comments on the record for what will probably be litigation by any number of groups if this moves forward. So there are important reasons to get on the record here. There's also a lot of ways to submit comments with the aid of organizations like Great Old Broads, any number of organizations in your area that you might be following and that are a part of the Roadless Coalition are, sending out alerts and encouraging people to comment and have their own tools for helping you do so. So any of those are great. In order to be counted in an analysis that, because it's on the public record, it's important that these go through regulations.gov. And it's best if they're personalized and not just like signing a petition. So Great Old Broad's portal for this will get you, counted in the right way. But you can also go and just do it directly. So I'll talk more about that in a second. And then the other important thing is that these have to be on time. September 21st is when this comment period ends unless an extension comes about. And that's the key thing here. And don't worry, we'll send all of these links that I have here, and I'm going to talk more about a couple. So this it's a couple of guys who are doing amazing work, but in association with the Sierra Club, More Than Just Parks created an amazing roadless rule tool. And it's got this interactive map, it's got tons of background, and it has a unique comment generator that can help then you plug in some information, it helps generate like good substantive comments that are unique, and then it helps you go to the official website and then submit those, which is pretty cool. And basically what it's helping you to do, what any of these comment generators are helping you to do is to create a unique comment. And that's really just about putting in why you care about these places and this issue, how you might be impacted, or areas or that you love are impacted. You can use any number of talking points that we'll share with you, and you just want to state clearly that you want the agency to retain the roadless rule. And that's about all there is to it. You don't have to be an expert in anything. When you go to the regulations.gov website, and again, we'll share this, but it's really quite simple to submit a comment. You'll get to this page right here, and you just need to cut and paste into the place that says comment. That's pretty much it. Or you can upload a PDF, and you want to make sure that you're clicking that you're an individual, you're not representing an organization, even if you're a member of those organizations. And then you can enter your contact info so that the government can let you know about the next steps. Yeah, there's some other tips too, but in the interest of time, I'll get to a couple other actions we can take real quick. You can also contact your legislators. Like I said, they are subject to the majority vote, and letting them know that public lands and protections for the roadless areas are important to you is really important. They might take some action. There's currently a letter circulating to all members of Congress opposing the roadless rule repeal and asking for a comment period extension. As of this morning, there's, I think, almost 90 members of Congress on that letter that will go to the Forest Service. So that's great news. And then there's also pending legislation called the Roadless Area Conservation Act that would essentially make the roadless rule a law so that it will be harder to change in future administrations. So you can ask your legislators to support that or thank them if they're already a sponsor. And then finally, we need people to know about this effort so that as many people as possible speak up for these public lands. So a few good ways you can help spread the word is by submitting letters to the editor of your local paper. Even if it's an online source, that's totally fine. These are usually short and they can just look like a comment that you send to the Forest Service, expressing, your values and what you want to see. You can also share on social media if you're on there. That can mean making your own post, maybe after you've gone out on a hike to a roadless area. Or you can just like, share, or comment on others that are talking about the roadless rule, and that will help amplify their reach. And then finally, get out there, share some of these roadless areas with a friend and encourage them to write comments once they're inspired by the area. So thanks a lot. I hope I can answer any questions about how to take action when we get there.
Thank you, Chandra. Thank you so much for that. And thank you, Tim, for representing the voice of firefighters there. Chandra was just saying there about making sure that we comment by the deadline and also to make sure that we increase visibility, make sure that people know we're fighting this. And she gave a little bit of foreshadowing because that's what I'm going to talk about at the end of this conversation. In the meantime, if you have questions for Chandra or if you have questions for Timothy Inglesby, please feel free to put them in the chat. We will have time at the end of this conversation. We'll have about 15 minutes and they will answer your questions. And I'm sure that you have lots of them. So just drop them there in the chat and we will get to them at the end of the conversation. And now we will hear from our good friend, Roz Switzer, as I said, is a co-leader of the Sonoran Broadband. And Roz will be talking to us about another really big issue, the border wall. So Roz, please take it away.
You. And I'll have Rachel go ahead and start my slideshow for me. The first slide coming up is a map of the 2,000-mile long U.S. border. It stretches from the Pacific all the way to the Gulf of Mexico, and it encompasses mountain, desert, wetlands, coastal ecosystems all along all 2,000 miles. We have the subtropical and the temperate zones that converge along the borderlands, and it makes them incredibly biodiverse. Species normally not seen together intermingle along here. The Trump administration has substantially elevated border barrier and infrastructure construction, both in their first term and ramped it up here in the second term. Remote areas, monuments, and parks are now being targeted, and few migrants cross there. So they are starting to install parallel secondary border walls to the north of the original wall that they have already constructed. So in response to this unprecedented attack on our environment, actions have sprung up across the border. So on the far left, you see Organ Pipe Cactus National Monument, and right next to it is the Tohono O'odham Nation that runs about 64 miles along the border there. The next to the east is Lochiel, and that is just to the east of Nogales. And then Farther down, we see Big Bend National Park. So we do have actions occurring along the border. Next. Thank you. So studies have shown that the border wall decreases wildlife movement by 86%. So large animals like black bear, ocelot, back up one, thanks, and javelina cannot cross at all. But even smaller animals, as small as toads and snakes, don't fit into a lot of the new border wall construction that they can't get through along the bottom. We have a jaguar here in Arizona. His name is Cinco, and he's in the northern range of their range. And if this border wall is complete, then he will be cut off from the chance of any mates from the south coming up, which they are actually very close to the border right now. A couple females they've documented. And another thing that's going to occur with this new parallel border wall is that animals are now going to be trapped in a death zone between these two parallel walls with no way to get out. So to survive, species need to follow their seasonal food and water sources, no matter what side of the border they're on. But the wildlife migration corridors that have existed for thousands of years are blocked. Next. And this is Quitobaquito Springs. So currently there's clearing occurring for a second border wall to the north of this. And this is an Organ Pipe Cactus National Monument. And the second border wall is going to basically pass through the wetlands created by the spring. This is the sole habitat for the endangered Sonoyta pupfish seen on the upper left, as well as the U.S. population of the Sonoyta mud turtle seen on the lower left. And there is a local spring snail that is found no place else except in this particular spring. So the effects of aquifer depletion for construction activities, which is huge, estimated at 700,000 gallons of water per mile of completed barrier. It can be seen at this spring if you ever visited in the past, and you will see this elsewhere along the borderlands as well. So this site is sacred to the Tohono O'odham Nation. And we had a lot of activity this week. On Monday, U.S. Representative Adelita Grijalva and Tribal Chairman Verlon Jose visited the spring with media, and that was to raise awareness and speak out against the destruction of this fragile ecosystem. It was followed that evening by a packed town hall in nearby Ajo, where residents are overwhelmingly opposed to construction of this border wall. The Tohono O'odham Nation did close their roads to non-tribal members a couple of weeks ago. They've long opposed any permanent wall dividing their lands. Their tribe is on both sides. They're in the U.S. and they're in Mexico. But Tuesday, contractors accompanied and guarded by masked and armed Border Patrol and Bureau of Indian Affairs agents, as well as a SWAT team, entered their sovereign territory to start pre-construction activities. So when we move east to Big Bend National Park to see what's going on there, this month construction crews began clearing vegetation, grading roads, and excavating. Opposition and protests erupted against the destruction, and they are widespread and bipartisan. So in response, last week, the U.S. Customs and Border Protection Commissioner Rodney Scott paused construction in the park. And I want to note that this is only a pause. So to understand who is benefiting from this borderland construction, we're going to play a clip from the Democracy Now! Interview done with Lakin Jordahl of the Center for Biological Diversity.
I think we're not able to hear that, Rachel. Rachel, we're not able to hear that.
Rachel, can you unshare and then reshare for audio for video enhancement?
I think you need to stop sharing, Rachel, and then when you share again, click the little button that says it might say like share settings, and then it'll say like do the audio for sharing video or something like that. And if we aren't able to see it, Roz, would you mind giving an overview of what it says? Is that okay?
Sure, I'll just give a
Hopefully
brief
third time's the
overview.
charm. Let's see.
It's a great interview.
We have seen local sheriffs who are extremely conservative, border security experts come out and oppose this thing. We've got Republican state house reps on our side. This pause is welcome news. It shows just how nervous the administration is about this resistance. But we have no reason to trust DHS. None. They didn't even admit that there was construction happening here until this week. They were trying to hide that from the public. And we've been out filming the bulldozers every day, working with this incredible local community. And I don't think they understand just how deep people's connection to this land, to this national park, and to the Rio Grande is here in Texas.
So let's talk about who got the contracts. Newsweek says Tim Barnard and his wife donated $1 million to a Trump fundraising committee in 2024. Barnard Construction Company has been awarded billions of dollars in federal border barrier contracts, including nearly $2 billion linked directly to the Big Bend region. If you can talk about this. And also, we're not talking about building the wall in Big Bend, right? It's the infrastructure to service all of this, for example, surveillance, etc. But start with the donors who are contractors now.
Yeah, these contractors are darlings of this administration, and they've been given billions of dollars to build walls all across the U.S.-Mexico border. At this point, this administration is using this national park and its destruction as an opportunity to transfer billions of dollars into their pockets. And it's the same playbook that we see all across America's public lands. These contractors have received $7 billion to build walls, vehicle barriers, and roads across the region. In the park itself, it's a $1.7 billion contract. That is more than half of the entire annual operating budget of the National Park Service. As the former Park Service staff, I cannot fathom, they have lost a quarter of their entire staff. They are facing budget cuts like they have never seen. Trash cans are piling up at national parks. Staff have been fired, and we're losing so much institutional knowledge. And if we just spent a fraction of this $1.7 billion on actually sustaining our national parks, dealing with the maintenance backlog, it would be life-changing for so many people. But instead, we're using all of this money to build a useless network of roads that cut into the most pristine part of the national park just to enrich a federal contractor.
And talk about why we're
Next. Thank you.
American National.
Broads has an event planned. It's the Big Bend Bumper Shoots and Bio Blitz Broad Jump. So come join Broad Rose Chilcote at Big Bend National Park. That'll be at the end of September. And as you can see, there's lots of advocacy and activities planned. Next. Okay, we're moving to Lockheed. And 27 miles of double border wall are being built that are going to divide this remote San Rafael Valley, and that's in the one in Arizona. The hamlet of Lockheed is the epicenter of a historic struggle. So they have a cluster of ancient Fremont cottonwoods anchoring a riparian forest there, and it has spanned the border long before this area even became part of the United States. 4 of these trees stood within what's termed the Roosevelt Reservation, which is a 60-foot federal easement that runs along public land on the U.S.-Mexico border. And they were targeted for removal by the Department of Homeland Security for the second wall. So the excavators arrived and they uprooted 3 of the trees. And then Kate Scott, my friend and co-founder of the Madrean Archipelago Wildlife Center, raced to the 4th tree, which you can see at the back there. And she wandered back and forth behind the trunk, and the machine ended up pulling back due to her presence. So the handful of activists made a bold move, and in the dark before the contractor started their next workday, they set ropes in the tree and they sent up a climber. It was July 29th, and this is the first Borderlands tree sit that it had begun. And it's historic. It's never happened before. So I was there the first day. Actually, I camped the first 3 nights. So this first picture shows 2 of the carcasses of the grandmothers that were knocked down, and you can see the tree in the distance. If you look at the tree on top of Borders Kills, you actually are seeing a teeny tiny head. And that's the first day where they put the tree sitter up in the crook of her branches. And so I like that picture. And so what's happened now is that the encampment has really grown. It's very organized now. The activists continue to stop construction in the immediate vicinity, and they do plan to stay with the grandmother cotton tree for the long term. So ground support and tree sitters are welcome and needed if anybody has any interest in joining. Next. So efforts to halt border wall construction here are now international. And on day 21, a Mexican national climbed a cottonwood whose canopy extends over the border road. And that's a picture of him going up into the cottonwood on the Mexican side. And they continue to have an encampment there because this destruction affects the south side of the border just like it affects the north side of the border. But this is not about one tree. It's a protest against ecocide that's occurring along the borderlands and elsewhere in our public lands, which we're all experiencing. So the question is, how did this happen? Next. When the 2005 Real ID Act was passed, it did include a section that allows the Department of Homeland Security to ignore all legal requirements so that construction of the barriers and roads in the vicinity of any international U.S. border can be done quickly. So you have one person, the Secretary of Homeland Security. He's unelected, politically appointed, and he has the authority to waive any federal, state, or local law he deems necessary. Additionally, the public's democratic right of judicial review is extremely curtailed. And this is an indefensible delegation of legislative authority. So with the passage of this waiver, basically a rogue agency has developed. Next. This next slide is showing the laws that were actually waived this July just for the Big Bend sector. So archaeological and cultural sites associated with thousands of years of human use have been damaged along the borders. Graves have been disturbed. Endangered species, migratory birds, and wilderness have been compromised. Watershed health has definitely been destroyed. Next. So what can you do? So the momentum continues. There's been a surge of unrest across the borderlands against this ecocide. In fact, yesterday, Representative Grijalva announced plans to introduce legislation that would end the Department of Homeland Security's sweeping authority to waive federal laws to expedite this border wall construction. So we are urging you to contact your members of Congress. Request an immediate halt of all border barrier and infrastructure construction in Big Bend National Park, Organ Pipe Cactus National Monument, which includes Quitobaquito Springs, and the San Rafael Valley. Secondly, request that they co-sponsor legislation to rescind the Section 102 of the 2005 Real ID Act. And this is what has allowed the waiver of so many laws designed to protect us from exactly what we are now experiencing and fighting against. So the end goal is to cancel all border construction projects and pursue meaningful environmental mitigation for the damage done to the borderlands. And this would include not initiating new contracts or resuming any construction. It will take centuries for the land to restore itself to its new normal, but steps have to be taken now to open the border back up for wildlife, protect our precious water resources in a very arid area, minimize erosion that has occurred from this devastation, restore the scarred landscape, and foster respect for community. So thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, Roz. Thank you so much for sharing that. Oh my gosh, your pictures and Chandra's pictures and all of the wisdom from you both and from Tim have just been so illuminating. So thank you for sharing all that experience that you have. It's wonderful. So we have time for some questions, and there have been a few questions shared. So I will help facilitate and direct those to people. So the first question, Tim, is for you. Industry-sponsored groups are spreading two pieces of disinformation about the roadless rule. The first is that the roadless rule has closed existing roads, and second, that logging roads are recreational. So the question is, we understand that these are pieces of disinformation that are sponsored by industry, but how do we counteract it? How do we kind of tell the truth and make sure that people know what the deal is really with these roads?
Okay, well, I've heard some of that before. A variation on that, one Forest Service clear-cut timber sale alleged it was for scenic enhancement. Well, I said that's more obscenic enhancement. It was these are primarily about resource extraction, and not just timber, but ore and oil as well. So, uh, yeah, I'll leave it to others who are more recreation experts. I mean, what kind of landscape do you prefer to be in, a forested one or a devastated one? So, and the other one, I forgot the first part of that question.
Oh, it was just about the fact that these roads are the kind of,
Oh, they're closed.
yeah,
Yeah.
how do we tell people what the real story is?
Okay, the real story is this, and it's unfortunate, but all those roads that conservationists worked hard to close or decommission, in case of a wildfire, the bulldozers come back and open right up again. And so that is not done with any kind of public informing or consent, but they open up all these decrepit old logging roads that you thought had disappeared or were closed to the public. And that's another thing is the Forest Service does not maintain its old decrepit logging road system unless there's a fire, and then it goes to work using the suppression funding to do all the road maintenance work in that. So um, really, the expense of building the road and maintaining that road in perpetuity far exceeds the money that aviation assets can provide, can transport and supply hand crews in roadless areas who will be working in the places that really do matter, are more effective in controlling fire spread and safer for them. Those on ridge tops or valley bottoms, two places that are really environmentally destructive to build roads, if at all possible. So that's what we're advocating is no more roads in roadless areas, but maybe a series of helipspots, spike camps, ridgetop hiking trails that are also fire trails. And these are not just so much areas to stop wildfires during extreme conditions, but more to put in prescribed fires or cultural burns during the best of conditions for controlling behavior and achieving desired effects. So that's my response to those questions.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Tim. And I'm hearing some really good stuff for a comment in all that. I'm hearing some really great content that could go into a comment. So thank you for that, Tim. And if you don't mind, Tim, just super quickly, can you share the feeling among wildland firefighters? Is there rage? Is there anger? Is there resignation? Is there some cautious hope? It just, how does it feel? You know, you're kind of fighting that good fight every day. Can you just share a little bit about how it feels?
Thank you so much, Reba, for that question. The crews are overwhelmed right now. We are getting our butts kicked just trying to protect homes and communities in landscapes that are already heavily eroded, heavily logged, and to now go into another 45 million acres of some of the most remote, rugged, steep, hazardous terrain to do aggressive, mechanized, militarized firefighting. It's overwhelming. And, you know, unfortunately, this comment period is strategically designed to exclude firefighters from participating in the comment process. So that's something to consider. The stakeholders with the most at stake in Roadless Area Conservation Rule on behalf of wildfire are firefighters whose lives and limbs and lungs are on the line every time they go out to fight a fire. So thank you so much for that question.
Oh my gosh, thank you, Tim. And I know that I hope you just feel all the love that we're trying to send to you in the if we could all hug you right now, I know we would. And I know that folks here live in communities that have been protected by those firefighters, those wildland firefighters. So just thank you so much for sharing the kind of perspective from that side of things. Um, uh, One of the questions was, should we comment again if we have submitted comments in the past? Yes, please do. Yes. Feel free to highlight another aspect of the roadless rule. Feel free to bring in some of the information that Tim has shared. More comments are good. The goal, as Chandra said, was 1 million comments. So do it once, do it again. It's not like voting. You can do it as many times as you want. So please do. A question for Chandra. Chandra, what is a good way to get the Roadless Area Conservation Act reintroduced in Congress?
Yeah, well, as folks probably are aware, we've got an election coming up, and and Congress isn't going to be passing especially good legislation in the next couple of months. So yeah, I think looking ahead to reintroduction of protective bills for public lands in the next session will be really important, and it really just does have to come from the public, keeping this issue in our legislators' eyes. So, you know, if they keep hearing, we want roadless area protections, you know, please push back against what this administration is doing, and please promote, you know, this legislation, then they'll be more likely to do it. So, yes, there was both a Senate and a House version introduced this past year, and so those can both be reintroduced coming up with enough public support.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you so much, Chandra. Thank you. So turning now to, and well, before we turn, I just want to say, I heard again, Chandra say something, keep it in their eyes. So we got to keep it in front of people. So we will talk in just a minute about visibility and how we can kind of make sure that everyone is aware and seeing, and we're kind of putting this pressure through visibility. But before we talk about that, Roz, the interview that was there with Lakin was such a, gosh, what a great speaker. And Lakin touched on this quite a bit, but could you just, Roz, kind of again, sort of briefly share if the phrase death zone is very scary, the death zone between the walls, knowing that there was a SWAT team needed to build a piece of infrastructure. This seems very bad. And the fact that it's completely ineffective is just mind-boggling. So could you just real quickly, again, Roz, kind of share, if it doesn't work, no one wants it, why is it happening?
It's strictly greed. That is what it is. The um, the thing to realize is that it is a death zone. Even a single wall is a death zone because these animals cannot get across. This is very arid. They are they are dependent on being able to move to the next water source because all they have is a few springs, a few rivers, and then the ephemeral waters of the monsoon, which only run when you get, a nice big rainstorm. And that's their migration pattern. And there are dead animals along the border who have been unable to get through. And it is getting worse. Now, if you put it up a second dairy border wall, there happens to be these 8.5 by 11-inch, about 70 of them, openings that they choose to call wildlife corridors. Think of a piece of paper. Any animal who gets through there or goes around the end of a secondary border wall that isn't complete is stuck, and they have to find their way back or they die. So these parallel bollard walls are complete death traps for wildlife, and they do not stop. They do not stop migration. It takes less than a minute to get over these. So the only thing that's being harmed is the ecosystem. And another thing, answering your question, I've been in the borderlands for the past 12 years. And it's becoming more and more militarized. They added the military, that you have the 101st Airborne is running along the border now, helping the Border Patrol. You have the contractors and their security, which is actually the worst. The worst offenders for being belligerent are the security for the contractors. And you have, like in the Tohono O'odham Nation, you have the Bureau of Indian Affairs agents. So the fact that they sent armed and masked people into the Tohono O'odham Nation with a SWAT team when there was actually absolutely no violence. There has been no violence along the border. There was no plans for violence along the border.
It's just crazy that all of that is ramped up for putting money in people's pockets. That there's this, and it sounds like a very scary place to live. Not all the time scary, but it sounds like uncomfortable at times with military and security for contractors, and hearing that there's over $1 billion going just within Big Bend itself, while there are people in the National Park Service who are losing their livelihoods and trash cans are overflowing, and it's bananas to think that we are upending the system to benefit a few people rather than to benefit all of us and the nature that we all depend on and are connected to. That is crazy talk. And then Roz, just in the 1 minute or so that we have left, there's a lot of interest in supporting the tree sitters.
Oh,
Maybe
yes.
joining the encampment and sending food and supplies and things. Can you share, Roz, how would people do that if they were interested?
Well, they do have a fund, and so I can send you the link to the fund. Give Butter. I don't know, it must be a site. Give Butter. So that you can donate cash. If you're in the area, you can drop stuff off. They have a running supply list that of things that are needed. And if you do want to go in person, just contact me. And then I'll be happy to make some introductions and help you get down there.
Oh, that's so great. Look at that, y'all. We all 73 of us have an invitation now to go and hang out with Roz and these great people in the tree site. Thank you, Roz. That's awesome. And thank you again so much to Chandra and to Tim for sharing all of that information. Now, the thing that I've promised you all this whole time, as everyone keeps pointing out, even this, action at the tree is a way of increasing visibility. If someone were there in that tree and no one knew, it wouldn't be a tree falling in the forest, but a tree standing in the forest. Really only means something if people know about it. So visibility is really key here. So I am going to put something into the chat, and I would love if you could take a moment and click on that link. And I'll give you a second to click here. So this is a map of actions that are planned by people like us. This is a map of actions that are planned or already underway. And our good friend Ann Dalvera, who's here on this call with us, and I and a staff member, Nicole, will be taking this list to DC to lobby members of Congress during Wilderness Week. And we want to give them a really good showing. We want to show them that great old broads are standing up. So in the chat there, you'll see a couple of ideas that have been shared so far. Commenting on the roadless rule, saying this is not what local communities want. Contacting a member of Congress to encourage the Roadless Area Conservation Act. That's the act that Chandra was mentioning would make the roadless rule a law, not a rule. Contacting members of Congress about the border wall and public lands, and sharing the word. Chandra suggested just share the word, write a letter to the editor, post on social media. So I think that there are something like 20, 18, 19, 20 actions on that just right now on that app. What I would really invite you to do is to take 1 minute now and write your action. Copy and paste if you'd like. Anything that you plan to do this fall. You don't have to have already done it, just plan to do it. And wouldn't it be great if we got up to 25 actions in the next 2 or 3 minutes? So if 5 or 6 people could copy and paste whatever it is that you plan to do, write your own thing, whatever your plan is, put in your name and all that good info, and we can actually see the map change here right now. So I'll give a minute. I'll give a minute and let's see what happens. Let's see if we can have 5 or 6 more things join up on this map. I see one more. I see one more has joined. I see one more. That's awesome. Let's see if we can have maybe 4 or 5 other people write out what they plan to do this fall to fight back against all of this craziness and lift up a big voice. Oh, I see 2 more. I see 2 more. That's so awesome. It's really, really great. Oh man, this is looking great, y'all. I'm refreshing madly. Oh, I see a great big clump from there around the Denver area. Oh, that's so great. I'm gonna just refresh one more time. I think that we've done it. I think that we've done it. If not, then we're very, very close. Ah, that's so great. And I see that there are some ideas there in the chat. Elle, thank you for sharing the link to the fundraiser. Linda has shared a flyer to raise awareness of the roadless rule. So if you plan to put up a flyer, stick it on the map. Stick it on the map. Let's take that. Let's raise that visibility to Congress. Thank you for sharing that, Linda. Owner, someone is saying, writing a letter to the editor because this person's county is surrounded by USFS, and we just had a 35,000 acre fire. So really sorry to hear that, and hope whoever this person is, that you and your family are all safe. And thank you again to Tim and all the others who are fighting those fires. And great idea to write a letter to the editor. That'll make a big difference. And please put it on the map so that there's this awareness that there's this great big wave. Linda, thank you for adding those actions. Is that Izetta? Sorry, I can't quite, the text is too tiny. The map is right here. I will stick it into the chat again so that everyone has it. And there is a request for Tim to maybe write a letter to the editor. And yes, we will get all of that sorted for everybody. All of this information will be sent to you by email. Please open your email in the next couple of days, because you'll see the link to this map, you'll see the presentations, and you'll see more information about how to take action. If you go to that link that's in the chat there and scroll down, you'll see a little form that you can fill out. Once you fill out that little form, your action will be added to the map. So just go to that page that's there in the link, scroll down a little bit, and you'll see a form. And when you fill out that form, you'll be helping stuff in your area and the roadless rule and borderlands, and you'll also be part of this real big pushback against members of Congress when we go there this September. Thank you again so much to Roz. Thank you to Chandra. Thank you to Tim. And most of all, y'all, thank you to you for being here. This was 80 odd people who are chosen to be here and to stand up against these attacks on public lands. So thank you all, and we will see you next month.